Dan Alasso with History for Today. And as the spring semester has been winding to a close, I've begun dipping into my White Pine Zotero folder and doing a bit of reading over the last couple of weeks. I've been highlighting and commenting in the preview app, which is the default app that any PDF that I attach to a citation will open in. And once I've read and highlighted the document, then I open an Obsidian window next to the highlighted document to make my reading notes. I actually open my lumber folder as an Obsidian Vault, which I find really convenient, so that all of the additional pages that I make for links that I might want to expand on will be saved in that folder rather than in my alphabetical list in my main vault where I'll have to go looking for them. I'm resisting the temptation to add bibliographical cards to the Obsidian Vault. Niklas Luhmann, you may recall, had a set of cards in his Zettelkasten that were the source citations. I don't get the impression from reading his descriptions of his process or reading Schmidt's research into it that these were actually an active and kind of integral part of the network of ideas in the boxes that he was using as the basis for his output. This output seems to have been based on the digested reactions on his note cards, which are a level of abstraction beyond just citing the sources. This is similar to the distinction that I've been trying to make between quoting and paraphrasing that I think is important for me in this process of making ideas that I put into my vault my own gradually. So I'm going to try to split the citations out into the Zotero folder and keep all of my PDFs attached there. I have begun citing the source documents in the Obsidian pages using the publication year and the author name as my convention. And the search feature in Zotero should allow me to very easily locate the source in Zotero if I need to go back to it. I don't really think that I need to link these documents much more closely than that. I'm thinking here of the function in margin note 3, which would allow me to create a link that would actually open margin note and take me directly to the highlighted text. I think this is a very impressive piece of kind of technical magic. But in the year or so since I've known how to do it, I haven't really used this capability in my research. I've just demonstrated it in a video. I think it's relatively rare that I'll want to return regularly to documents that I've already processed. So I'm not going to do that much more right now than citing the source and then mentioning page numbers as I summarize or comment on a particular fact or point that I'm adding into the reading note. I've been enjoying this process of adding the notes into Obsidian and making links to other notes in the vault or to new ideas. It's very satisfying to me connecting a new point from a new source into the body of information that I'm working on and building up particular ideas. Often these notes are about places like my hometown of Glens Falls. I've been noting passages that talk about this early lumber center. So now I can create a page for the city. I can add source citations and link other mentions. I can return to the page later. Actually, I'll return again and again and add my own notes. And this will be an iterative process as I discover new sources and add new information to them. Over time, I'll discover how Glens Falls fits into my story. Sometimes I come across new ideas and I make pages for them. A couple of new things that I found when I was looking at accounts of the early years of the Ottawa River lumber industry were timber slides and the idea of squared timber. Timber slides were built beginning around 1829 to make it easier to float cribs of timber over rapids or over waterfalls. And the earliest form, it turns out, that the British preferred for Canadian lumber was in the form of squared timbers. So when the trees were cut in the woods, before being transported, the logs were actually squared off using broadaxes. This was incredibly wasteful. Typically, a third of the wood was wasted from the logs that would ultimately be transported. And this isn't a feature of the later United States lumber industry, so I'm going to dig into it a bit and see where that takes me. And here I should say that although it's probably totally uncool for a professional historian to admit this, One of my first sources of information when I discover a new topic like timber slides or squared timbers is Wikipedia. It's not my only source, of course, but it's usually a good place to get a basic clue about the topic and often to discover some links to additional information. After all, a lot of people have put a lot of hours into contributing information into this public encyclopedia. I've personally edited a couple of pages myself. And there's a very active community checking to make sure that sources are cited to validate just about everything that's said on any page. And the images that people have found and have made available in Creative Commons licensed formats are often really, really useful and valuable to me, as are the links to further information and the bibliography at the bottom. This isn't the end of my search for useful information, but it's a very good beginning. A final thing that I can do to preserve a trail for myself when my research takes me to these types of online sources is to use Hypothesis to highlight them and annotate them. I don't have to do this in public, as it turns out. Instead, I've created a private group that I've just called Research that I alone have access to. And this allows me to annotate these public pages to my heart's content without leaving any type of a trail. And then, of course, I can use my Hypothesis homepage as a place that I can easily return to anytime to either review my highlights and notes or to actually go back to the texts that I had highlighted. And Hypothesis, of course, is another free tool. So I'll be sure to feature it when I teach my students how to do all this beginning in the fall. And I'll have more to show about this process as I continue doing it this summer. But I hope for now people found that a little bit interesting. Thank you very much for listening. I'll see you again